15-year-old Zachary Davis was brought in for questioning after a fire broke out at his house. At first, the incident seemed like a tragic accident, but that changed dramatically when a body was found inside. Even more horrifying was the discovery that the victim, Zachary's own mother, had not died in the fire. She had been killed beforehand, brutally bludgeoned to death with a sledgehammer. In the interrogation room, Zachary didn't react as most might. Instead of breaking down or showing signs of fear, he remained eerily calm and expressionless. Within seconds of the interview starting, he confessed without hesitation, but in a disturbingly emotionless and unsettling way. Zachary's behavior in the interrogation footage is shocking. His responses are honest, blunt, and chilling. The detectives were left questioning whether they were dealing with a deeply disturbed teen suffering from mental illness, or a cold, calculated liar who had crafted a horrifying story. The case began in the early morning hours of August 10, 2012, in Hendersonville, Tennessee, when emergency services were called to a house fire. Inside, they discovered the blood-covered, disfigured body of 46-year-old Melanie Davis, Zachary's mother, lying in bed. Outside the burning home stood her older son, 17-year-old Josh, but Zachary was missing. About 4 hours later, police found Zachary walking alone on a road 5 miles away. He was picked up and taken to the Sumner County Sheriff's Office for questioning. Investigators began by explaining Zachary's rights, which he calmly waived before the interview began. From the very start, something felt off. Zachary didn't show any emotions. His voice was flat and detached. This lack of expression hinted at deeper issues, possibly a guarded nature or even an underlying psychotic or developmental disorder, like schizophrenia or autism spectrum disorder. To understand his behavior, investigators asked about his past. Zachary confirmed that his father had died from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, when he was just 9 years old. While he initially claimed his father's death didn't bother him, he later admitted that it had affected him. After their father's death, Melanie moved with her sons to Sumner County, hoping for a fresh start. But things only got worse. By age 11, Zachary started showing signs of mental distress. Melanie took him to a therapist, but it wasn't a long-term arrangement. When questioned, Zachary said his mother never explained why he needed therapy. Medical records later revealed Zachary had been diagnosed with a depressive disorder, followed by psychosis. He even claimed to hear the voice of his deceased father. Despite these red flags, Melanie eventually discontinued his treatment for reasons unknown. Though Zachary told police he wasn't seeing anyone for help, his phone calendar showed an appointment with a school guidance counselor indicating that someone might have noticed something was wrong. Still, no one could have predicted what was to come. When asked directly what had happened at the house, Zachary confessed, "I killed my mom." He gave no dramatic explanation, just flat, emotionless words. Investigators asked why, but his answers were vague. He admitted to starting the fire, although he claimed he didn't think it had spread too far. When asked whether he had problems with his mother, he only replied, "Not sure." It was clear that he wasn't just confessing, he was emotionally disconnected from the horrifying act he'd committed. Curiously, text messages retrieved from Melanie's phone painted a completely different picture. Just a day before the murder, mother and son exchanged normal, even affectionate texts. She had taken Zachary and Josh to a movie, and one of her last texts to Zachary ended with a heart emoji. These messages gave no sign of tension or danger, making her murder even more baffling. Detectives then showed Zachary a notebook they found which contained disturbing entries about his mother. They gently encouraged him to explain what he had written and why. Zachary was quiet but compliant. He acknowledged the writings but didn't elaborate on what drove him to kill. Meanwhile, Josh was also brought in for questioning. He recounted the day casually, saying he had gone to the orthodontist with his mom before returning home. When asked about his relationship with Zachary, Josh described his brother as quiet and said they mostly kept to themselves. He didn't express much emotion, nor did he speculate about what may have driven Zachary to commit the crime. Whether this was due to shock or a distant sibling relationship was unclear. Despite the outward appearance of a normal family, Zachary had been spiraling for years. Diagnosed with mental disorders, hearing voices, and socially withdrawn, he eventually carried out an unthinkable act that left investigators and the world shocked and searching for answers. Despite the gruesome reality of what he had done, text messages between Zachary and his older brother Josh painted a very different picture of their relationship. The brothers communicated frequently, discussing school delays, video games, and even birthday plans. In one touching exchange, Josh messaged Zachary, "If you don't want Ryan to come over, I can tell him not to. I want you to have your birthday the way you want it, and I especially want you to be happy on your birthday." Their messages were often warm, ending with heart emojis and "I love you," further complicating the tragic image of what would eventually unfold. When questioned about his social life, Zachary revealed he had no real friends beyond his mother and brother. He admitted to spending his time isolated and alone. Yet a note on his phone hinted at a deeper emotional world. Dated March 29, 2012, Zachary wrote about a teacher named Mr. Voss, describing him as the only person who had ever sincerely cared about him. He said Mr. Voss was like a father figure, and expressed remorse over their strained relationship, saying, "I hope it can be forgiven." This note, filled with longing and sadness, showed a side of Zachary far removed from the emotionless boy sitting in the interrogation room. Josh's account of the night offered few clues that something was wrong. After returning home from a movie around 8 p.m., Josh noticed nothing unusual about Zachary's behavior. He described Zachary as typically quiet and kept to himself. Josh recalled talking briefly with his mother around 9 p.m., even working out with her for a few minutes before saying goodnight. She then went to bed, unaware that her younger son was planning her murder just down the hall. Zachary later confirmed that he waited in the game room until everyone had fallen asleep. Around 11 p.m., he entered his mother's room and attacked her with a sledgehammer. He estimated striking her around 12 times, targeting her head while she slept. Afterward, he checked her pulse to confirm she was dead and locked the door behind him to ensure Josh couldn't intervene. Chillingly, Zachary admitted that he had hoped the fire he started afterward would kill his brother as well. Josh described waking up to the sound of the fire alarm. He ran upstairs looking for Zachary, but instead found flames. Panicking, he rushed downstairs to get his mother, only to discover her bedroom door was locked. He kicked it in and found her lifeless body. In shock, he ran outside, called 911, and sought help from a neighbor. Investigators later found the murder weapon, a sledgehammer, alongside a bottle used to spread the fire. When asked where he got it, Zachary casually replied, "Garage." He admitted attempting to set the house on fire by dragging gasoline around and lighting it. But when that failed, he simply threw a bottle of accelerant to ignite the blaze. Investigators were disturbed by how matter-of-factly he recounted each step, showing no remorse or emotion. When asked whether he had any inappropriate contact with his mother, Zachary immediately and flatly said, "No." He claimed to have written a note both before and after the murder, explaining his motives. Investigators found the handwritten pages in his belongings, Zachary had even stopped at a convenience store to buy a Pepsi after the murder, before attempting to flee on foot. He had no clear destination, and when asked about his plan, he admitted he didn't really have one. While he may have fantasized about escaping like the serial killers he'd read about, his execution was impulsive and sloppy. A note found on his phone from January 2012 revealed an obsession with the mistakes serial killers make. He had analyzed patterns and believed most were caught because they stayed in populated areas or used loud weapons. Zachary's notes read like the thoughts of someone trying to learn from murderers, not avoid them. His obsession with serial killers may have provided him with a false sense of power or identity. People with severe mental illness often struggle with low self-esteem and may romanticize violent personas to feel in control. This could explain why Zachary mimicked behaviors he associated with killers, thinking he could outsmart authorities. However, a knife was also found near the scene, apparently part of his plan that he never carried out. When asked if he had planned to harm anyone else, Zachary said the knife was meant in case someone stopped me, indicating his escape could have turned even more violent if interrupted. He was asked directly if the woman at the convenience store was in danger. He replied no. But when questioned about the officer who arrested him, Zachary admitted he might have attacked if provoked, though he didn't, acknowledging the officer had a gun and he did not. Still, it was clear that his detached mindset and lack of empathy posed a significant threat to anyone who crossed his path. Perhaps most haunting was Zachary's admission that neither his mother nor his brother had provoked him. He didn't claim to be abused or mistreated. In fact, when asked if his mother was a good parent, he responded with indifference. This emotional apathy alarmed investigators. Was Zachary truly incapable of forming human connections, or was he simply performing the role of a cold-blooded killer, something he had rehearsed in his mind? One bizarre detail further indicated possible premeditation. Investigators found a sledgehammer with what appeared to be coded writing on the handle, along with a handwritten cipher key. The message translated to Z Requiem, possibly referring to Zachary's initials, Zachary Everett Davis, and the Latin term for a funeral mass. Whether it was a symbolic name for the weapon or just the delusion of a disturbed mind, it suggested that this act of violence had been considered long before the night of the murder. When asked how he felt about killing his mother, Zachary replied without hesitation, coldly, "It didn't bother me." The investigators were stunned by his cold response. He admitted feeling the same way about his father's death. Whether this was a defense mechanism to block out pain or a sign of a deeper psychological disorder like schizoid personality disorder, marked by emotional detachment and preference for isolation, remained unclear. Despite Josh stating that there were no major conflicts between Zachary and their mother, Zachary had still carried out the brutal murder while she slept. When asked why he struck her so many times, he said it was, flatly, to make sure she was dead. In a grim demonstration, he reenacted the motion of swinging the sledgehammer. Blood was still visible on his pants and shoes, evidence he made no effort to conceal. The full truth of what drove Zachary Davis to commit such a horrifying act may never be fully understood. But one thing remains clear. Beneath the appearance of a quiet, introverted teenager was a storm of psychological trauma, isolation, and dark obsession that eventually erupted in violence. During his interrogation, officers pressed Zachary Davis with questions about the clothes he was wearing. He calmly confirmed, "Yes, sir, those are the same pants." And calmly, "Yes, sir, that's the same shirt." However, when asked where the original shirt he wore during the attack was, Zachary admitted he had discarded it because it contained remnants of his mother's brain. The detectives, still trying to make sense of why Zachary had murdered his mother so brutally, asked him to walk through his day leading up to the killing. That's when something peculiar emerged. Zachary mentioned starting his day by reading Stephen King's Misery. In the film adaptation of the book, a character uses a sledgehammer,
the very weapon Zachary used to kill his mother. Although Zachary denied any connection between the book and his actions, insisting it was just a coincidence, the detectives remained skeptical. They pointed out how unusual it was for someone to choose a sledgehammer as a murder weapon. When asked if he had considered using anything else, Zachary replied that he had thought about using a claw hammer. Yet when asked about his feelings during or after the murder, he flatly stated he didn't cry, didn't scream, and didn't say anything to his mother before striking her.
When asked if he loved her, he said simply, "Somewhat." Asked whether she had ever done anything to deserve such hatred, he replied, "No, sir." Zachary seemed intent on taking full credit for the killing, denying any influence from misery, but his internet history suggested otherwise. Investigators found 2 disturbing apps on his phone, one about serial killers and another about torture devices. Mixed among ordinary searches for game cheats and jokes were numerous gory images and bookmarked articles about gruesome murders, including the Junco Furuta case and a chainsaw massacre. He seemed especially interested in cases involving young killers, such as the infamous Sasebo slashing in which an 11-year-old girl murdered a classmate. Perhaps most revealingly, Zachary had also bookmarked a page titled Understanding Schizophrenia from helpguide.org, suggesting he might have been researching his own symptoms. His phone also contained notes reflecting a deeply disturbed mindset. One entry listed a possible victim named Samantha Marshall. Another read like the thoughts of a horror villain, hanging over the masses like a shadow, executing them all one by one, without a sound. Death will eventually punish us all. Meanwhile, detectives interviewed Zachary's older brother Josh again, this time about an incident from middle school. Josh recalled stepping in to protect Zachary from a classmate who had been picking on him, while Josh saw it as simply defending his younger brother. It's possible Zachary resented needing that protection. When asked if he still wanted to kill Josh, Zachary responded, yes. The detective, baffled, asked why he would want to harm the only person he ever confided in. Zachary admitted he knew the reason, but refused to share it. The detective noted Zachary's consistently robotic monotone voice and asked if he always spoke that way. Zachary answered, yes, sir. Josh later confirmed that Zachary had always been quiet and flat-toned. When asked what made him laugh, Zachary gave an unsettling response. He laughed while killing his mother. He couldn't explain why. Paradoxical laughter like this is sometimes seen in individuals with schizophrenia, either as a reaction to hallucinations or inappropriately in serious situations. Yet throughout the interrogation, Zachary hadn't laughed until that moment, suggesting he might be trying to perform the role of a villain. When asked again why he laughed during the murder, Zachary simply replied, I don't know. The detective challenged him, pressing him to consider whether it was a sense of accomplishment or perhaps something he thought was funny. Still, Zachary gave no explanation. The detectives tried to explore whether long-standing family issues may have driven him to kill. Eventually, Zachary made a shocking allegation, claiming he had been sexually assaulted years earlier by a relative, though there is no evidence to support this claim. He said his mother didn't believe him when he told her, and after that, he stopped bathing. Among the belongings recovered from the burned house was a notebook that had somehow survived the flames. In it were 2 notes from Zachary. One read, I was raped by him that day, and I've been planning to kill him ever since. Another was a confession, seemingly written just after the murder. I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel remorse. My only true regret was that I didn't give her a faster death. These writings suggest Zachary may have suffered from delusions, another common symptom of schizophrenia. Delusions are firm beliefs in things that are not true or supported by evidence. As the detectives tried to piece together Zachary's story, they emphasized that even though it was his story, it still mattered. They urged him to explain what had changed that night, why he had finally acted out after years of silence. Zachary could only say, it just built and built.
As the interrogation came to a close, the detectives asked Zachary what he thought should happen to someone who did what he did. He said, "Whatever is necessary." When asked whether he had considered the consequences, he admitted he had, but didn't want to talk about it. He also acknowledged that he assumed killing one person wouldn't carry the most extreme sentence. Finally, the detective asked a curious question. "Do you always look at people through your eyebrows?" Zachary, surprised, smiled faintly, and replied that no one had ever asked him that before. The detective noted it looked kind of evil, to which Zachary giggled, a rare break in his emotionless demeanor. To someone obsessed with serial killers, being called evil may have been flattering. He had maintained his cold, villainous persona throughout the entire interrogation without breaking character. After the interrogation, mental health experts evaluated Zachary. One psychologist testified that at the time of the murder, Zachary lacked the mental capacity to premeditate. He had been driven by psychosis, and his ability to reflect and use judgment was impaired. Diagnosed with schizophrenia and a depressive disorder, Zachary told a doctor that he had heard his deceased father's voice telling him to kill his mother. However, police pointed out that he had packed bags, fled the house, ditched his phone, and confessed to planning the murder for years, all signs of premeditation. Zachary later appeared on Dr. Phil, where he gave yet another motive for the killing, that his mother wasn't taking care of his family. But the most shocking twist came during his trial. After sticking to his confession for 2.5 years, Zachary suddenly changed his story. While on the stand, he claimed he hadn't killed his mother at all. Josh had. This surprise accusation stunned the courtroom, including his own defense team.
His attorney requested to be removed from the case, but was denied. The judge noted that it was unclear whether Zachary was a master manipulator or genuinely delusional, but that would be up to the jury to decide. Ultimately, Zachary Davis was found guilty of first-degree murder, attempted murder of his brother, and aggravated arson. He was sentenced to 71 years in prison, with eligibility for parole after 51 years. To this day, speculation remains that Zachary may have harbored fantasies of becoming a serial killer.